It's not 5 o'clock, and they don't care. Welcome to Wine to 5. Entertainment, education, and everyday drinking for everyday people. Your hosts are Valerie Caruso and Stephanie Davis, two wine educators who don't need a clock to know when to pour that next glass.
'Tis the season for sparkle, as evidenced by the glitter that waits all year round to shake itself from my Christmas decorations and festoon my floors for months on end.
Oh, Val, we are excited because, yes, sparkle. I like a lot of sparkle, but, I also like blingy t-shirts. And Val had this clever idea, like, why do we not have Wine 25 blinged out t-shirts? So they're coming today, actually. Val, I'm so excited. Yay!
I am so excited. I woke up today going, oh my God, 'tis the week before Christmas and blingy t-shirts are arriving at Steph's house soon. And I'm so excited because there are places I want to go and I want to wear them. And I like the gray one just fine, but sometimes I just want to dress up my t-shirt under a blazer or something. And I'm excited to have our blingy, sparkly t-shirts from Sparkle Plenty.
Yep, they're coming today. Sparkle Plenty designed some really beautiful t-shirts for us, and we will wear them proudly. But we also are proud to have some sparkling wines in front of us. So in this episode with these sparkling wines, we are going to decode Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore DOCG.
Yes, and it's first of all, we were talking about 'tis the season. It is important we tell you that the fine bubbles, sparkling wines in this episode were provided by Gregory White, PR, and the Consorzio di Tutela del Conegliano Vino Valdobbiadene Prosecco DOCG. So, without further ado, we're going to decode this first wine in our glasses. We actually have 5 of them we're going to talk about today. And we're also going to talk about why it's unlike typical Prosecco that most people know of, that you can buy in a store, sometimes sub $10, and why this is different. So tell us what's in the first glass, Steph.
All right. The first glass is a 2016 Ca di Raio Cuvée del Fondatore. And this is a Prosecco Superiore Millesimato Brut from Valdobbiadene, and it is a DOCG. And if I were to break that all down for you, what we're talking about is the producer is Ca di Raio. The name of the wine is Cuvée del Fondatore, which means cuvée of the founder. The style is brut, which means dry, and we'll go over a little bit of that later on in the episode. The grape, we also will be explaining. The grape is 100% Glera, and then where we're talking about is an appellation in the Prosecco area called Valdobbiadene. Okay, so that's kind of the breakdown on that. And the word millesimato on the label indicates that the wine is made from at least 85% of the grapes from the vintage stated. So in this case, it's 2016, which, it's 2017. So this is a nice, youthful, fresh wine. So when we taste it, we'll probably, Val and I are anticipating that kind of a thing, so kind of cool. The Superiore on the label refers to the Spumante version of Conegliano Valdobbiadene DOCG. And just to refresh your memory, Spumante, or sparkling or foamy, must be a minimum of 3.5 bars of pressure. But very typically, it's closer to 5 bars or otherwise atmospheres.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, when we talk about atmospheres of pressure, and I learned this when I was studying the champagne and the sparkling wines from around the world, and what the difference is between a frizzante, which is 1 to 2.5 bars, versus a spumante. So you think of the difference, like frizzante is more like a sparkling water maybe. And then you think of the spumante, which is more of your sparkling wine. What we can equate this to is about, when we talk about 3.5 to 5 bars or atmospheres of pressure, we're talking about 51 to 74 pounds per square inch. So think about where you inflate your tires. And if you think about the tire pressure gauge, most of those max out at 60 PSI. And most of us don't fill our tires to to that. So there's a lot of pressure in a bottle of bubbly, but if we think of them as in terms of pounds per square inch in tire pressure, think of all that pressure throwing a cork out of the bottle at 60 miles an hour, if you think about it. So I think that kind of puts things in perspective. And then of course, there still exists something that I personally have never had, and it's called a tranquillo Prosecco. It wouldn't be a superiore, but it would mean tranquillo means quiet. So that would mean like a still wine, Prosecco without bubbles. It's made with the same grapes. It just doesn't go through that second fermentation to dissolve that carbon dioxide in the wine, which gets us all excited about the bubbles in our glass. So,
yep, just something else geeky there.
Oh, I know. I love it.
I love it too. And I have some more nuggets because I want everybody to understand that when we're talking about spumante, the full sparkling, that's about 95% of all production of Prosecco. So that's what you're going to see most often. And the frizzante that Val was just talking about is currently slated to be removed and potentially be labeled as IGT from now on. So that's just some more info to keep an eye out for. But we should just get to tasting this. Yeah, I noticed when I poured the wine that there was an incredible amount of mousse, a very clear, pale color. But what I love the most about it, besides drinking it, right? But the bottle is a cool bottle because it's clear glass. So you see the beauty of the wine, and the bottle's kind of shorter than other champagne style bottles. It reminded me a lot of the French champagne Ruinart. And so that was something that caught my eye as it would be a great gift. And also for retailers, it stands out on the shelf.
Right. I just noticed that it's shorter, believe it or not. I'm sitting here, I got all four of them on my desk.
Yeah, significantly.
It's a shorter, squatter bottle, and the videos on the website of this producer are absolutely gorgeous as well. So we'll definitely link that up for you. But yeah, I just noticed that stuff. And like you said, this is a youthful wine. It's got a lot of that typical tree fruit.
Definitely.
Kind of like those Japanese apple pears. You know what I'm talking about? What are they called?
Yeah.
Kind of like those.
Uh-huh. Yeah, totally like that. And lots of flowers, I thought. I thought it had kind of an intoxicating perfume.
This one certainly jumps out of the glass at you, which...
It does.
It's, again, primarily fruit and flowers, and absolutely lots of mousse. So I would say this is a great holiday sparkler, and they recommend it with things like fish and vegetables, and I would say just anything light. I wouldn't, unless you really love to have it with steak, but yeah.
I recommend pairing it with your Santa hat.
Yes.
Yeah. And some smiles for sure. But yeah, let's talk about, I mentioned on the label, it only says Valdobbiadene. And so it's like, why did they leave off the Conegliano part? So that leads into our regional wrap.
Yeah, so our regional wrap, and eventually I'm going to get this wrapping thing down. We're going to have some backbeat. Some pod-safe backbeat, of course. And Prosecco, as you know, already comes from northeastern Italy. And the DOC wines actually encompass two regions, the Veneto and Friuli. But much of the growing area is flat, plains, and valleys. And the wines that we are drinking and the ones that we're talking about today, these are the DOCG regions of Conegliano Valdobbiadene. And these can only be made in the designated growing areas that are about an hour north of Venice. And they are named after the two towns of Conegliano and Valdobbiadene. But what makes this extraordinary are the 15 hillside towns that represent the top tier of Italian sparkling wines. And Italians are known for wanting to grow their grapes on the hillside. So naturally, as you go further up the hills, the quality of the wine climbs higher on the quality tier as well. So when we're talking about these steep hills, the grapes have to be hand harvested. And of course, we've got such a diverse climate here as well. I mean, you've got, altitude ranges from almost sea level, about 50 meters or so, all the way up to 550 meters above sea level. And then we have cooler temperatures, and we have a higher diurnal shift too, because first of all, you've got pure sunshine, depending on the aspect of the hill. So you're going to get a riper grape from the sun, but then you're going to have that cool air that's going to preserve that acidity that makes this really awesome for sparkling wines. And you're going to have that alpine influence because you've got the Dolomites nearby. But you've also got the Adriatic Sea and some rivers. And so you've got such a variety of
It's kind
climates.
of a perfect combination.
It really is. You do have a variety. So you can't just narrow down all the soils are like this and all the climate is like this. It depends on aspect. And I always talk about this. One of the things I like about the wine region, trying to nail down one producer is different than nailing down a whole region's climate and soils. And I think that's one of those interesting things that when we talk about all wines, white wines don't taste the same, that wine doesn't come in two flavors, red and white. All sparkling wine is not the same. All Prosecco is not the same.
Oh, yeah, which is so obvious when you're able to have this kind of opportunity to taste multiple Prosecco DOCGs all together, because then you can taste and see the difference. You see the difference in the mousse, in the bubbles, in the color, in the nose, the length, the persistence of everything, the flavor and the everything, so you can really see that they're not the same animal. And the other thing that Val had just kind of mentioned really quickly is that the soil types are incredibly different from Conegliano, that town and that area, compared to Valdobbiadene. And so we're not going to get into that, but the links that we have set up for you in the blog, you can geek out and check out the differences in the soil types and also understand why some of these producers prefer to use Valdobbiadene on the label, because it is considered a little bit more prestigious, and so they can just drop off the Conegliano if they want to, but you can see that they're just different places, because of the soil composition.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And what we try to do on the show is give you enough overview to pique your curiosity. We're not going to dive into the depths of the subject that you would need if you're going to pass a diploma exam, of course. But we also want to give you those resources so you can explore these for yourself.
Yeah.
And conduct a tasting with your friends or a tasting group if you need to. But you got another nugget about Conegliano Valdobbiadene. I could say that all day. I just love it.
Oh, I'm getting better at it. It has been hard for me to kind of get my tongue to do what it's supposed to do.
It's a whole different group of muscles when you're speaking another language. Your mouth moves differently when you speak Italian than when you speak French or English.
Yes. Well, this was good enough for me to make sure it made it into our show, because this particular area, in 2008, they launched a project to be recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And so this year, in 2017, their candidacy was approved. And I just think, from 2008 to 2017, I mean, it's still not listed on the UNESCO World Heritage Site. There's still more work to do, but talk about persistence. But also, when I was looking at the Prosecco.it website, which is incredible, they have a lot of information to help you understand why it's so important to the world that it should be recognized and preserved. And a lot of that has to do with these cultural and artistic things going on there, right? So it's landscape, nature, architecture, all of the winemaking tradition and innovation. There's so much that goes into proving that this is an extraordinarily special place. So as you can imagine, going to visit and having those wines would be quite the experience. So we're not there. We hope to make you feel like you can understand it and pique that interest. So let's start drinking this next wine and tell everybody how this next wine is.
Yes, this next wine is a 2015. So we're going back a year to 2015, the year of our podcast launch, or fondatore di podcast. Podcast di fondatore. But this is the 2015 Ruggeri Vecchie Viti, which means old vines. And this is a Prosecco Superiore Brut Valdobbiadene DOCG. It's about a $24 bottle. And of course, the producer is Ruggeri. The wine is actually called Vecchie Viti, or old wines or old vines. And then the style is Brut. And you might remember that from some of our bubble talk in the past, what Brut means. But here's the interesting thing about this wine, and this is what's getting me all excited at 10 o'clock in the morning here, is a 90% Glera blend with Verdizo, 6%, and 2% each of Bianchetta and Pereira. And you're probably sitting there going, what did she say? I've never heard of those grapes. Guess what? We haven't either, unless you're studying this stuff. So, and it's been a couple years since I've dove into the Prosecco and have studied the different grapes and all that. And usually I might see a Chardonnay or something, but I don't normally see these other grapes. But this particular Prosecco, the name means old vines, and this one has a really nice persistent mousse in the glass too, because when you pour these, and you've got them all 4 lined up here. I noticed this one has a mousse or 5 actually, but we're not opening the other one until later, and you'll hear why. But the 4 that we have open, this one actually has a really nice mousse on it. But what's interesting also about this, the vines are about 80 to 100 years old. And this is an homage to the people who've cultivated the land all these years. And I want to taste this real quick. So let me shut the hell up and let Steph give you her tasting notes on this. And then we'll get into the grape gab here.
Yeah, because I was tasting while Val was wrapping there. And this wine also is very clear and beautiful. Lots of foam. I like how it feels in your mouth when you hold it there. I think it has a lot of fun structure and character that is different from that last one. The freshness is still there, but it doesn't have as much youthfulness. I think there's more complexity you can tell from the older vines and also from the addition of those additional grapes, right? So you've got these unusual grape varieties that are just spicing it up a little bit, like a little, salt and pepper to kind of change it. And that's how I feel that this has still got melon and pear and some citrus notes and flowers, but totally a different wine and totally delicious.
It's almost got a texture to it.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Like a prickly pear kind of texture to it that I like. And it makes it it's got a lot of interest on the palate. And I think that's also what's one of those thrilling things about wine. And what I talk to a lot of my clients about is the way the wine feels in the mouth. It's not just the flavors of the wine. Everybody goes, oh, it's got flavors of peach and pear and apple. But how does it feel in the mouth? How does the acidity feel? Does it make you salivate? Are there tannins? Are there those astringent properties? Is there a weight from sugar, alcohol, tannin? What's the body like? And I think exploring the textures of the different bubblies is also very thrilling. But let's get back to the grapes here, because even though we talked about Glera earlier, which used to be called Prosecco back in the day, this grape has to make up 85% of any DOCG Prosecco. And in this particular wine, it's got 90%. So back in the day, back in 2009, 3 big things happened. And I was actually at Vinitaly in 2010 when all this was being celebrated that year, because the previous fall, they decided to change the name of the grape from Prosecco to Glera. In fact, originally I had learned that the name of the grape was Prosecco, sometimes called Glera. So they hadn't officially changed it when I started my wine studies. So that's exciting. And of course, the area is named Prosecco and the wine. Of course, legally, they can't have all those things called the same things. So they just changed the name of the grape and boom, there you go. So now Prosecco actually applies only to the growing area. So when you see it on the bottle, it's kind of like Burgundy.
Yeah.
It's an area. Okay, Barolo is an area. Brunello di Montalcino is an area. So a lot of people think it's a wine style, and that area is representative of a wine style, and that's what we have here.
Exactly.
So that's when they created the elevation of that area and the Conegliano Valdobbiadene to the DOCG, and that, of course, accounts for about 25% of total Prosecco production right now. And besides the Glera in this glass that I'm so excited about,
let's talk about the other grapes.
Yes. These make up 15% of the blend in DOCG Prosecco, but in this case we have Verdizzo, Bianchetta, Pereira, and Glaralunga. So these are the other grapes that they can use. Again, they can use Pinot Noir, they can use Pinot Bianco, they can use Pinot Grigio for the Spumante only, and Chardonnay. But the Verdizzo in this glass, it makes up 6% of this blend. This is an old, indigenous, autochthonous, or native. All those words kind of mean the same thing. And this grape is uniquely Italian, and it dates back almost 300 years. There was a disastrous frost in the early 1700s that, according to, and my thing for all things grapes is Jancis Robinson's Wine Grapes, the Kindle edition that lives in my iPad. This Verdizzo was heavily planted after that frost, and it was all but forgotten about and revived, so to speak, in the 1960s by an Italian vine breeder named Giuseppe Tocchetti. So I think it's interesting that this is one of those grape comeback stories. And
yeah, there's a lot of those grape comeback stories. And then we have to give a special nod and cheers to Giuseppe.
Yeah, we do. And we also like those Who's Your Daddy stories, which brings us to the next grape, the Bianchetta. It's also known as the Bianchetta Trevigiana, Bianchetta Gentile, or Vernacina, among other names. But this is another one of those hardcore grapes that has been around since possibly the 17th century. So this one goes back a little bit further, according to literature that they found around Treviso. So this grape was actually once used to make vermouth. That excites us. We love vermouth on this show. And it's believed to be the offspring of a red grape called Brambana, which you don't see a lot anymore, and crossed with Durella. And this was according to the Wine Grapes book too, which, really excites us. And now it's in our glass of our 2015 Ruggeri Vecchie Viti Prosecco Superiore Brut Valdobbiadene DOCG. I just love saying that. And then we get to the last grape, another 2%. And you're probably thinking, Val, why do we care about what 2% of the blend is? Because it's different. It's Pereira.
Yeah.
It's Perera. And if you can say this 5 times really fast, Pereira and Prosecco brings a perfume and pear. Yeah, say
I'm going to let you do it.
Pereira and Prosecco brings perfume and pear. And you could probably put that in Italian and get more peas into it. But this is another one of those nearly extinct grape stories that lived happily ever after, that almost succumbed to a vine disease about 40 years ago when I was just a kid. But back to the Glera in our glass, in our next glass, right, Steph?
Yes, the next glass is also 2015 Massotina Contrada Granda Prosecco Superiore Millesimato Brut from Rive di Oliano DOCG. Okay, now we're talking about Rive. So we've got more explaining to do, you guys. And as you may have guessed, the producer is Massotina, and the wine is called Contrada Granda. This is a little bit more expensive, just, depending on your market. This is going to be $30 or so. And it's 100% Glera. But I think it's time to break dance and break down the DOCGs and explain what Rive is. And that's spelled R-I-V-E. So here it goes, folks. Prosecco. You're like, yeah, why didn't you do that in the beginning? Because it's our show and we can decide when we do this. There is 3 appellations for Prosecco. The DOC Prosecco, which is about 90% of all Prosecco and is what you see most often, especially in the grocery stores. Then we have DOCG Colli Assolani and the DOCG Conegliano Valdobbiadene. Okay, so since that's what we're drinking and that's what we're talking about, that is further broken down into 3 subcategories. You've got the Cartese, which is one of the Rives. Think of this one as the Grand Cru vineyard of all Conegliano Valdobbiadene. Then you have the Rive, all the rest of the Rive. Those are considered like the premier cru. So this one that we're drinking right now is one of these Rive. And then you have everything else, which is like the first 2 wines that we had. So that's how that breaks down. The Rive translates into a local dialect, meaning steep sites or banks. And they are single village or hamlets that are considered to be almost as prestigious as that Cartese one I was telling you about. And that one encompasses 107 hectares. It's one vineyard, and that's why it's so special. And this Rive system, we mentioned earlier, 2009 was kind of a big deal. And that is when this Rive system was created. There are now 43 Rive. And when it states that on the label, by law, 100% of the grapes must come from that Rive, and they must be vintage dated. The bottles must be vintage dated and hand harvested at lower yields. That's what makes it kind of a more prestigious wine. Is it time?
It is time. It is time to give it a sip and a slurp and, again, make some comments about this wine. Mm-hmm. Insert tasting notes here.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay. We do want to give you an idea of what a Rive would be like. And this one from this producer has more structure. It is a little bit more complex. I think it has a nose that's kind of more like drinking a white wine.
Well, I think, again, the thing with Prosecco that distinguishes it from a lot of other classic produced sparkling wines, remember, it's the way it's made. So it does preserve a lot of the fruit. So, we're back into the tree fruits and maybe a little stone fruit here.
This is my favorite one of them all, actually.
Okay. I think I like the last one the best because I've already had my lips on it. But this one also has more of that citrus.
Yeah, it has citrus, but there's, I think when you can't fully describe it, but you're enjoying it and it's giving you pleasure, then you know that there is something very intriguing about a wine because there's a lot going on and not one aspect is jumping out.
Yeah, and this one does, like I said, it's a little bit more fizzy. It's up there at that 5 atmospheres of pressure kind of thing. But what is also interesting about this is way back, do you guys know what kumquats are?
Yes, I used to have a tree in Phoenix, a kumquat tree when I was a kid.
Yeah, and I remember watching a Martha Stewart show and she was doing some kind of kumquat thing. I'm like, I have no idea what that is, and I went out and bought it. And when I stick my nose in this glass, I think of way back in 2002 when I had my first kumquat from the market. And that's what it reminds me of.
That's cool.
Isn't that weird? I know you can't put that on an exam, but I think it's a really cool comparison. So this is one of those fresh wines, but it's still got some nice structure to it. You can have with your vegetables. I always think of a little crostini with stracchino on it. I think that would be really good with this. And, just some like Tirali.
Oh, gosh. I love that stuff.
Yeah, and I can see that working really well with this. But again, this is one of those celebration wines. You've got a light meal, some nice chicken dishes, some seafood, and just some light fare vegetables.
Yeah, but it's far different from this next wine. I think we should introduce the fourth wine.
This next one is Belenda, Se Uno, Prosecco Superiore Brut, Riva di Carpathia DOCG, about a $25 bottle. But I would have thought this would have been the more expensive one. And yes, it's older. Okay, so we're talking about a 2014 here. The producer is Belenda. The wine is Se Uno, Seiuno. The style, it is a Brut style. So it's going to be dry. And the grape is 100% Glera, and the appellation is Carpathia. But we could not justify calling ourselves educators unless we geek out just a little bit more and serve up a few more juicy morsels and a large helping of factoid fodder. So the styles of these wines that we have in front of us do follow the terminology of champagne that range from dry to sweet. In this case, a lot of Prosecco that you see on the shelves can be extra dry. And anytime you see the word dry on the label, whether it's dry or extra dry, you're going to have more grams per liter of sugar. Okay. But then when you see Brut and extra Brut, then those are going to be a little bit drier. So we'll go ahead and put those notes in the show notes. But if you've studied sparkling wine at all and you know the graduated levels of sugar and dosage, then you know what we're talking about. You can pretty much apply that to these Prosecchi as well. But what makes it sparkle is what's really exciting. So, and I like how some of the sources we've looked at, I'm looking at this word here where they call taking the foam spumantizzazione. And I'm like, what? That's a long word. But basically it's a word that means to make it sparkle. And they can do it in tank, which is how most Prosecco is done. It's, via the Charmat method. We've talked about it before, or the Italians will call it the Martinati method because it's how they came up with this autoclave tank, and it's pressurized. Basically. So the wine goes into the tank, it's pressurized, and that's where the second fermentation happens. Or in the case of this next wine that we're having right here, this Rifermentato in Bottiglia, this one was produced in the bottle.
Right.
So yeah, like the traditional method. And so what they can do it one of two ways here. They can do it like they do with a lot of clarified sparkling wine, where they freeze the neck of the wine, eject that yeast plug and all the funk, and then you've got this beautiful, clear, sparkling wine. Or they can do what really excites me and do it on the lees, leave those funky, dead yeast cells in the bottle, which is what we're going to have in a wine later on in the show. And so the wine isn't going to be clear. It's going to be kind of cloudy, because what they did is they left the yeast cells in there, and when they died, the proteins start kind of like decomposing into the wine, which gives it a creamy texture. And if I'm pretty sure that all of you are sitting here thinking, that's not gross, that sounds delicious. And it does. It absolutely sounds delicious. So we're going to try and get a video of that for you so you can see what it looks like. And keep in mind that if I can just go back in history a little bit, before people figured out how to clarify sparkling wine by ejecting that yeast plug through disgorgement or dégorgement, they used to have those old cut crystal glasses and those colored glasses with a little reservoir in the bottom, and that's where the sediment would kind of hang out. So if the glasses are like cut crystal in color, you can't see the funk, because they didn't know how to remove it back then. So this is going back to an ancestrale or old style of making wine, and we think that is absolutely fabulous. But this particular wine that we're talking about right now, the Sei Uno, it is fermented in bottle. It is clarified. It is a little slightly darker in color. More like a
noticeable. Yeah.
Like a pale straw almost, because it is a little bit older. But this one has got a complexity that I'm really enjoying. What would you say about it, Steph?
Oh, I loved it. I kept thinking it smelled like pie crust, and it has some yeastiness to it and toastiness, if you like that, and something to share and have some geeky time with some friends who love wine. But, anybody who likes champagne, I think that this is the one out of all of them to share. It still has freshness and some, fruit, but it's not the lead. It's not, I think there's that nuttiness and that pastry kind of thing is there almost equally with the freshness.
It's almost got like a hazelnut savory quality to it that I am digging the heck out of right now.
Yeah, nuts
Yeah, digging this one, but we want to move on quickly because we've got another factoid for you, and we've got a drawing to do.
Yeah.
And so we want to talk about the Fondo factoid. And one of these, Steph, you want to talk about the Col Fondo real quick?
Yeah. It's just a follow-up on this method of where the second fermentation happens in the bottle without disgorgement. Another name for this is Col Fondo. And so Val was saying how we actually have one of these bad boy bottles, and we're going to drink it together. And we just wanted to share with you that Fondo means bottom. So the sediment is still in the bottom of the bottle. And, I think because it's so difficult to find, that we want to make sure we capture the experience in video and make sure you guys really understand that kind of, that's something that we bring to the show, is our interest in obscure things. So,
and a way to help you remember it, because fondo is an interesting word that does mean, like Steph said, it can mean bottom, it can be leftover or the sediment, it can be deep, it can be dense, or even to establish. And the way I remember it, and what occurred to me when I saw Col Fondo, is I remember being in a restaurant in Italy somewhere and asked asked where the bathroom was, dove il bagno, and somebody said al fondo, and then some other words that I don't remember. But all I remember was there was this long, dark, skinny hallway, broken tiles, boxes of stuff, and, don't trip and bump into things. And the bathroom is way down, and step down, don't kill yourself, into this dark, tiny closet of a bathroom. And that, to me, I'm not saying by any means that the wine has any similarities to the bathroom, but it does remind me of being way in the back, way at the bottom of the stairs, or the bottom of the hallway, or the bottom of the bottle, or the leftover kind of thing. And that's what occurred to me when I saw that. So we'll talk about the wine later, and we'll plug that in here. Would like to, certified sommelier, do the honors?
I'll give it a try.
Yeah, so we're sitting here with the La Vigne d'Alice e Fondo, and we talked about the fondo meaning, it can mean sediment. Col fondo means with the sediment. But in this case, the fondo is al fondo, is at the bottom of the bottle. Yeah. And you can see that there's a really nice cloudy, yeah, girl.
Woo! Look, it's just kind of smoky on top.
Isn't that beautiful? Steph is going to do the pouring here. We've talked before on this show, and look cloudy. See? To me, that's sexy.
Now let me bring it up to the...
Yeah, it's cloudy, or we would just say... not very clear or bright. But this is one of those things, I don't know personally if I would do it, but remember when we had Chantal Bergeon-Gonnet on the show talking about champagne and how they actually decant older or champagnes that are done like this? And I know we keep bringing up champagne, but it's just because it's a reference point for people. But we actually had a conversation about decanting sparkling wine in that show.
Right.
And this is actually a case where you probably could do it, but I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. Like always, my suggestion is to always taste first and then decide on the decanting part.
I'm kind of with you on that. I like to tell people there's a graduated process, especially for newer wines. And there's no vintage date on this wine, so that means when this bottle goes into the store, it is ready to buy. It is ready to open. So anytime you see sparkling wines on the shelves, they're usually not meant to lay down, especially if there's no vintage date on them.
Totally.
Like Steph said, a lot of times with a younger wine, I will want to taste the wine first, and then what I want to do is maybe don't put an aerator on a bubbly, for Pete's sake. But if it's like a Malbec, I'll put an aerator on it first.
Oh, Val, you just,
And then if there's time, I'll go ahead and dump that sucker into a decanter, and maybe with one of those decanting strainers that's got the aerator on it. I've got one that does both.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So let's give it a sniff.
Yeah, let's give it a try here.
Whoa.
I was just going to say, whoa. I don't know. That's just taking you some distant place.
Juicy Fruit Gum, 1974. You weren't born yet, were you?
There's some freshness, but there's a lot of funkiness. I'm not going there.
Oh
we are not talking about my age today.
Oh my God.
I did just have a birthday,
yes,
though.
I know, but I'm just sitting here thinking I'm making an age reference. I'm like, please tell me my partner was born then.
No, but this is kind of a cool wine. I haven't even tasted it yet, and I'm already like geeking out about it.
Okay, tell me if you're getting like spearmint leaves.
Yeah, well, there's something very herbal. I mean, it is like being in a garden, but I don't know, mint. I haven't tasted it yet. Oh.
What is going on in this
No,
glass?
I think you do get some mintiness. I'm kind of looking all over the place because I think I'm like word searching.
Yeah, and in case you haven't noticed it, we're actually not in our normal space.
Where are we?
Well, we're called Wine to Five because we are both 2.5 hours up and down either end of the I-25. We're right smack in the middle, right off of the I-25 here in Denver. And we are at the Curtis Hotel.
Yes, which is so much fun. It's like a funky little place that's got, some, like, I don't know, 50s flair kind of.
Yeah. It's very pop culture. I think that looks like an Audrey Hepburn kind of thing on my wall over there. And
like you're in a movie set, an old movie set or something.
Steph has Barbie dolls on her wall. And
it's like the hair room or
and
the
hair
big
dryer.
Hair. Yeah, I've got an old school like
chair dryer.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a big...
And then I have wigs on my room, too.
Yeah.
So,
and I have like a piece of vinyl record and things like that. So this is a lot of fun, but we thought it would be cool because we wanted to meet up and share this bottle and show you guys what Col Fondo looks like. I personally would drink it this way.
Yeah, I think I would drink it just like this, straight out of the bottle. I'm getting some gingery notes even. It's just kind of cool.
We've talked about earlier in this episode about how when the yeast sits in the bottle, in this case it was about 3 months after the bottle fermentation, 3 or 4 months, it sat there, and they just chose not to disgorge the yeast. Like normally what they do is they'll freeze this and then they'll eject that frozen yeast plug out of the... It's really fun if you guys see YouTube videos on it. It's quite sexy when they do it in slow motion too. But in this case, they chose not to do that. And this does add a little bit of richness. And we always overuse the word complexity in this episode, I fear. But in this case, it's not only added that, it didn't add the funk that I was expecting. I was expecting more earth and yeast.
Yeah, I think it's got more garden kind of like spices.
Yeah.
And
it's almost like a zesty quality.
And it does have some fruitiness, like freshness, youthfulness.
Yes.
Not as old as I thought it was going to taste, but I think there's like a creaminess to it.
It's got a little bit of everything. So it's got some fruit, definitely some citrus up front, some peel, like maybe like Meyer lemon peel. I always kind of go back to that. Hey, let's throw some quince in there while we're at it, some tree fruit.
Yeah.
I mentioned kumquats the other day, sure. But the spearmint leaves, like out in the garden, like you mentioned, we have this prolific mint plant in our backyard, and it reminds me of that.
Yeah. And I like how it really has this opaque, you don't see anything floating in it per se, and it doesn't look chunky or anything.
Or the bubbles anymore.
No, but it was a little bit fizzier than I had anticipated. And this one was, 2.5 bars?
This one's 2.5. Yeah, 2.5. So this puts it in the frizzante category, which also, in this case, this is not a superiore. This is a Valdobbiadene Prosecco DOCG. Vino frizzante fermentazione in bottiglia from Vigna di Alice. And this is such a treat. I really don't even know what the price point is on this bottle.
I don't know, but we'll have it in the show notes so you guys can check out the blog.
We'll figure it out.
And you can read all about the other Prosecco DOCG that we tasted. And this has been awesome.
This has been awesome. Cheers. And then we'll get to the Wino Radar. Okay, Steph.
Let's do the Wino Radar, because when I was doing all of my research and understanding these wines, one thing that came on my radar was Vino in Villa. And it's the annual cultural festival that's devoted to these wines of Conegliano Valdobbiadene. And it's held every third weekend in May. And you can go as a consumer, or if you're in the trade. It sounds totally magical. Again, you're talking about these dramatic hillsides and a soon-to-be UNESCO World Heritage Site. It doesn't get better than that, folks. Go get these wines lined up, taste as many as you can, experience the food and the people and the music and the hillsides. It's dreamy to even just put that all together and think that can be a trip,
A lot more resources out there for you guys to check out if you want to learn more about it, if you want to learn about these events, if you want to go there, because we know a lot of you do travel, a lot of you do make it to Italy and want to taste these things. So this is just something to kind of put on your itinerary and think about. We'll link up a whole ton of websites for you. Again, we want this to be a place for you to gather resources, but we also want you to send out your thanks and shout outs. A grande grazie mille to Gregory White PR, and especially Kelsey and Stephanie. And we'll plug in a picture. I actually met Stephanie at the Wine Bloggers Conference, totally by accident.
It's so cool.
We'll put that in there. It's so cool. And so we want to thank them for working around our schedule. We've been trying to hook up since August, and we are finally able to check these things out. The Consorzio di Tutela de Conegliano Vino Valdobbiadene Prosecco DOCG, and the 178 sparkling wine producers of the Conegliano Valdobbiadene DOCG, plus the over 3,000 growers that contribute grapes. Don't forget about the growers. Some people just want to grow the grapes. They don't want to make the wine.
Right.
I don't want to do either of those things. I just want to drink the wine. So we have to thank all of those people who enable us to sit here with these wines and enjoy them for the holidays. But who else should we be thankful to, Steph?
Our patrons, because they support this show on our crowdfunding platform called Patreon. So first off, to our tenacious tasters, Jeff E. from the We Like Drinking podcast, Lynn from Savor the Harvest, Sebastian of Sassy Italy Tours, Jen in Maryland, and David and Lisa in Illinois. And thank you to our It's Not 5 o'clock and We Don't Care listeners. We have a new patron to thank, Sean from Ohio, Meg in South Dakota, who just celebrated a birthday, Clay in Arizona, who will be a guest on the show coming up very soon, and in California, John, Andrew, and Azwani, Chantel in Ontario, Mary Lou in Pennsylvania, who just got her book shipped to her. So that's a reminder. We do have a Wine to 5 book club, and the book we are reading is A Glass Full of Miracles by Mike Gergich. So Mary Lou, that is coming your way. Kathy in Georgia, thank you so much. Chris and Janet, Diane in Colorado, Steve and Renee in Illinois, Kathy in Tennessee, Miss Ashley in North Carolina, who is blowing it up on our Facebook community page. You guys got to check that out. And our Tastemaker listeners, thank you guys too. David in Scotland, Carol in Kentucky, and Karen in California. So go to our Patreon page for the details, patreon.com/Wine25podcast, on how to be entered into our monthly drawing, such as that book we were just talking about, exclusive content that only our patrons get, and the swag that we send on over to them.
And speaking of which,
we have our December drawing to do, and the winner of a Wine to 5 t-shirt.
Oh, yeah.
This month.
Santa is in the house. So let's see what Santa's got in his classy brown bag of ho, ho, ho here.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's getting a t-shirt?
Sebastian.
Oh, Sebastian. That's so great. We know you'll wear it proudly.
Yes. Congratulations, Sebastian. He's been a supporter. He's been a guest on the show of Sassy Italy Tours. So we totally appreciate you. Congratulations, Sebastian. And as Steph mentioned, we are here for you every week between episodes. You can find us on the social spaces at Wine to 5, and we encourage you to join the private Facebook group called the Wine to 5 Community. I'm Val, and you can connect with me on Twitter at WineGal Unboxed, on the Vino with Val Facebook page, Instagram, and Pinterest as well. And Steph is everywhere. She is the wine heroine. And if you guys get your hands on some of these wines, you can connect with them on social media. Use a hashtag Prosecco Superiore. On Twitter, go to at Prosecco CV, as in Charlie Victor's. That's Conegliano Valdobbiadene. Also on Instagram as Prosecco CV, and on Facebook as Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco DOCG.en. That's for English. So that brings us to the end of the show, our second to last episode of the year, because this is going to air the week of Christmas. And we want to wish everybody, we know Hanukkah just started. We want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, a happy holidays, a happy Festivus for the rest of us, whatever it is you're celebrating.
Festivus!
Yeah. And I think our next episode after this is going to be our bloopers.
Yes. So happy holidays, everybody. Cheers. We hope you learned a little bit today and have some new sparkling wine to go find.
Yes.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Wine to 5 podcast. Be sure to check us out at Facebook/WineTWO5 and tune in next week for more fun and useful sip tips.